Namaste. Welcome to Tridevi Chamunda Mandir in Denver, Colorado. This is Yamajit. So glad you could join me. This is the next installment of our series on practices from my upcoming book, Kali Meditation, Book 4, Daily Practices Based on the Lineage of Kriya Yoga. And so today's program is going to concern the construction and consecration of the Sri Yantra, which is used in the puja, which we demonstrated last week. So the Sri Yantra, and I'm going to use this to begin with. My good friend and teacher, Nathia, at Shiva Sai Mandir, has a beautiful description of this diagram. She says it represents the nervous system of creation. So yantras are geometric designs designed to reflect the power of a particular divine concept. So there are yantras to various deities, there are yantras for the chakras, also for some very well-known divine teachers as well. So the simplest type of yantra is like this one I have in a picture frame. This is a Sri Yantra that was printed off the internet using a color printer and simply inserted in a picture frame. And this is quite useful for our main Kriya practice. That chapter on Sri Yantra construction in my book also contains detailed directions in how to draw and or paint the Sri Yantra, for those of you who might be interested in doing that. And whenever you can make a yantra for yourself, you really have something that is charged with your own personal power, as well as the frequencies from the Divine Mother as well. When I was first initiated into Kriya Yoga, I'm going to try and bring this up close to the camera so maybe you can see the details on this, but this is a Sri Yantra that's been engraved on a sheet of silver, and this was given to me by my Kriya Guru, Mira Pandey of the 64 Yogini or Chasati Yogini temple in Varanasi, India. And kind of hard to see the details on this, especially seeing that this has been given offerings for a regular basis for over 16 years. Here's another, what I would call a store-bought yantra. This is one that we used last week for a demonstration of the main Kriya practice, also stamped out on a metal plate, and these are quite useful for our practice. Pendants with the Sri Yantra can be used as well. And what's nice about this is it can be used for giving your offerings to during the Kriya puja and meditation. And then you have, when it's not being used in devotion, you can wear it throughout the day so that energy is always with you. This is a rather simple pewter Sri Yantra. This was a gift, again, from my friends Nathia and Channing at Shiva Sai Mandir. Again, kind of hard to see, but this is a piece of rock crystal that on the back you'll see that the Sri Yantra has been carved into the back of this crystal, so that when it's turned over, you have what appears to be a three-dimensional Sri Yantra. I'm trying to bring this up close for you to see, but the camera is just not going to focus on that. And speaking of 3D or three-dimensional Sri Yantras, I have 3 examples of these. So this is taking this 2-dimensional diagram and turning it into a 3-dimensional image. Here's a rather simple one that's made out of metal. These are sometimes referred to as Merus as well, like Mount Meru, the center of the universe. You can get these sometimes in metaphysical stores, Tibetan or Nepali importers. You can find these online, places like Amazon. This is a crystal. This is rock crystal again that has been carved in the shape of the Sri Yantra or Sri Chakra. And when you turn something like this over, you can see the divine from another perspective, you can see the design of it from another angle as well, and certainly for accessing the divine. This last Sri Yantra here, this is the official Sri Yantra for our temple, and this was carved out of a large piece of garnet. And this is one that I think you can see more of the detail of. But what I'd really like to focus on with today's program is how to construct your own Sri Yantra using thin sheets of copper. This is the kind of sheet copper that you can get at a hobby shop or an art supply. And it's very easy to emboss your personal yantra onto this material. You can sometimes find rolls of brass as well, and that will additionally work. So the first step is to print out a Sri Yantra, and these can be easily found online and printed out on your home printer. Then using a pair of scissors, we cut out this shape and we scotch tape it to a square of copper foil. And then we need a surface in which to engrave our yantra. So we need something that's kind of semi-soft, like a magazine or a catalog. We set our yantra blank with the paper copy on that. And then for a stylus, a simple ballpoint pen will work. So I like to think of the Sri Yantra as being rather like the Big Bang, everything emanating out from this central source. And so this is how we're going to trace our yantra using this design. So we're going to begin in the center, where we see this little spot called the bindu. I'll bring this up a little bit closer so you can see, hopefully see the spot in the center. And bring the point of the pen and just really bear down. And throughout this process, you're going to bear down on this so that the design gets embossed into the copper. So think about those old-fashioned receipt books where you were making maybe 3, 4 carbon copies and you had to really press down with the pen. That's the same sort of thing we're doing in constructing our yantra. So we're just going to move our pen, first starting with the triangle in the center, and then just tracing over the lines. Starting inwards and working our way out. Sri Yantra itself is made up of 9 different triangles, which is significant numerologically. Think of 9 months human gestation. Nine tends to be a very transitional number in a number of the world's spiritualities and mythologies. So I'm just going to start going over these triangles. Again, don't get too far down. And it's pretty easy to see which ones you've covered and which ones you haven't as you trace the design. The Sri Yantra is probably one of the harder designs. And so if this particular yantra just doesn't speak to you, you can use a simpler yantra for our Kriya practice, such as a Kali yantra, which is pretty easy to make. That's one that you can even do freehand on your own. That's actually one of the ways I like to do yantras. It's just drawing them or constructing them freehand. And again, that just adds a personalization to the design. So we've just about got the main triangles traced. There we go. So that's our 9 triangles plus the bindu, little dot in the center. We're then going to trace the circle around the triangles. And then surrounding that circle are 8 lotus petals. So now we'll trace over our 8 lotus petals. This is petal number 6, 7, and number 8. As we start over the top. And then we trace the circle around our 8 petals. Bearing down at the same time, trying not to tear the paper more than necessary. And now we have a circle of 16 lotus petals. So we'll start to trace those. And don't worry if your final product isn't absolutely perfect. It is still something that you've constructed with your own hand. And so it's something that's truly a part of you. And sometimes those little mistakes just give it some extra personality. Notice we got our 16 petals. Now we're going to draw 2 circles, trace 2 circles around our petals. We can do this in sections. There we go. And like I said, it's not exactly perfect. It's executed in reverence. It's still just fine for your practice. Little off the line here. That's okay. So there's our circles and our triangles and our petals. It's a little closer to the camera so you can see what we've done. And now we're going to trace this structure around it, this 4-gated structure which is called a vapura. 4 gateways, and traditionally in the vapura there are 8 direction deities called Dikpalas, which dwell in this. So, for example, Agni, the god of fire, in the southeast, Yama, god of death in the south, to continue around that, at least in the Nepali form. In the southwest would be Varaha, Vishnu's boar incarnation. Then in the west would be Kubera, god of wealth. And in the northwest would be Rudra, or the more wrathful forms of Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma. In the north, Lord Vishnu. In the northeast, and Lord Indra, storm god, directly in the east. So that's one version of the Dikpala deities. All right, so we've done a basic tracing around the inner edge of the vapura. Now we're going to do the outer as well, as best we can. Just halfway around. And again, there's alternatives to the yantra. In Nepali shamanism, crystals are regarded as natural nature's yantras. And so a favorite crystal could also be used in place of the Sri Yantra. Like this natural garnet crystal, which actually kind of looks a little bit like the design of the Sri Yantra. And garnet is particularly has a strong association with Mahakali. And also, as I mentioned before, this Kriya practice from Book 4, you could just as easily do this practice for the devotion of Ma Durga as well. Kali is really the wrathful form of Durga. So if we turn our sheet over, we can see the design of the yantra traced out, and actually this could be the surface of the yantra that you work with. It kind of looks rather nice, standing out, embossed in this nature. But the next step is to use your scissors, and this is another nice thing about this copper foil. It cuts pretty easily with a decent pair of scissors. But just use the scissors to tidy up the edges of the yantra. And of course, these scraps, please recycle those. And then let's remove the paper and the tape as best we can. And here's our Sri Yantra to be used for a devotion. I'm going to kind of press down on it from the opposite side just to flatten it. And then I'm going to remove the remaining tape. So there you go. There's our Sri Yantra. And I'm just taking a look at both sides. This is the back of our design, and I rather like how there's kind of a almost three-dimensional nature to this side of it compared to this side that we did the engraving on. The choice is really up to you which side you really prefer to use. I think for this one, though, I'm going to use this back side. Like I said, I rather like how it stands out. So now we're going to consecrate the yantra. We're going to literally load the energies of the Divine Mother, Kali or Durga, into our yantra. And this is called prana pratishta. And so what we're literally doing on a spiritual level is bringing our yantra design to life. So I'm going to refer to the chapter on Yantra Consecration from the book. Consecration of the Sri Yantra, Yantra Prana Pratishta. Before being used for meditational and devotional purposes, the yantra should be imbued with the spiritual force of Mahakali. This is a very simple process which will increase the yantra's effectiveness as a spiritual instrument. The consecration ceremony is known as Yantra Prana Pratishta. What you will need is a mala, counting the mantras with. Same mantra that same yantra, mala that you use in the regular practice. So some popular materials for this type of practice would be rudraksha, red beads, bone, like this mala, which is a personal favorite of mine. Sandalwood would also work as a good mala material. A surface to place the yantra so it's not touching the floor. I'm going to use this brass plate that's elevated up a bit. Sometimes, if you don't have a plate, you can just use a simple cloth as well. You're going to want an akman or water pot and spoon. And this is a particular favorite one of mine. It's actually a skunda from Nepal that combines the water pot and the lamp. And I'm using a small candle made from a combination of a ghee and plant-based wax. These are really nice to use indoors. I used to use camphor for this purpose, but that creates a great deal of soot. Camphor's kind of messy, so I tend to use that now just for outdoor fire pujas. And then the last thing we need is a container of vibhuti, which is sacred ash. You can buy sacred ash from an Indian grocery store. You can find it in places like Amazon. That type of ash, also called basma, is prepared a certain way. So in the traditional process, ashes from a ritual fire are gathered, ground into a fine powder. They're mixed with milk and ghee and made into little cakes, which are then baked in another ritual fire. Popular fuel for such a fire is dried cow dung. And then after the fire cools, the cakes are removed and they're ground into this fine ash powder. You don't necessarily need to do it that way, though. You can make your own vibhuti by simply saving the ash from the incense that you're burning from your previous rituals. That's a wonderful source of sacred ash. The sacred ash I have in this bowl, which is actually a silver kapala, so it's in the shape of a skull. This is the store-bought Indian grocery style vibhuti ash, but I've added some ash to it from two cremation grounds, one from Calcutta and another one from Kathmandu. So this is very special ash. This is actually the vibhuti container for the temple. You don't need to necessarily have an elaborate setup quite like that, quite like this. All right, so our consecration is very simple. We're first going to take some water from our pot, place it in our left hand, cleanse our hands, and then with your right hand anoint your third eye and your heart center. You could also be doing the Om mantra if you choose while doing this, and then taking the spoon and some more water from the pot and just sprinkling the yantra to cleanse it. You then take your mala, and we're going to raise the energy of the Divine Mother by chanting the Chamunda mantra, also known as the Navarna mantra, 108 times. Om Aing Rim Klim Chamundai Viche. 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 Take some deep breaths. Feeling the power of the mantra. Place your mala on the altar as an offering. You can always add one or two flowers as well. And then taking your middle or ring fingers on your right hand, taking some ash on them, and placing them on the yantra. Putting ash on the yantra while feeling the power of the mantra, reaching the yantra through your hand and arm, and saying Yantra Pranapratishta, Yantra Pranapratishta, Yantra Pranapratishta. Jema, Jema, Jema. Anoint your third eye with a little bit of leftover ash. That's very traditional. I want to say a little bit about the, as I call it, the care and feeding of yantras. So once you've done this ceremony, the yantra is ready to use, and it is regarded as a living being. If you gift a yantra to somebody, make sure it's somebody who's going to use it appropriately. Keep your yantras in an honored place when they're not being used, like your personal altar. And if you ever decide that you don't want a yantra anymore, if it's paper, it can be burned. If it's metal, it can be cut to pieces. If you burn it, give the ashes to the earth. If you cut it to pieces, and just feel the energies being released as you do that, and then take the pieces and make sure that they're recycled. So that's basic yantra construction and consecration. Next week, we're going to do another practice related to the yantra, meditating, doing a visual meditation on the yantra. This is called Drathika. And this is a wonderful meditation to work with your yantra and also any deity images that you have. And while speaking of deity images, I'm going to pan the camera up to a tanka painting on the door. And let me see if I can zoom the camera in a little bit. But this tanka is of the dark form of Vajrayogini, female Buddha, really the Kali of Tibetan Buddhism. And this is who we're going to be doing our cha practice this Friday at 7 o'clock to. We're going to be doing a traditional cha practice to this form of the Divine Mother. And this is going to set the stage for some variations of the cha practices that we've done so far in the series. And so I think you're really going to enjoy Friday's presentation. I think you're going to find it to be a very powerful guided meditation. And so that's going to be at 7 o'clock on Friday. You're welcome to join us on YouTube, watch the recording later, or you can join us in person at our temple, 1260 South Xavier Street in Denver, Colorado. So I'm going to zoom back out. Just bring the camera onto myself. I want to thank you for joining me this evening. And also thank you for joining me if you're watching the recording, especially if you have bought and are reading and working with Book 4 after it comes out after this summer. Namaste. Blessings always. Jai Mata Di. See you next time.